With F1 Manager 2024 not really releasing fit for purpose in my personal state, I've not been able to review the game yet because I've really struggled with all of the bugs. I've been turning my attention back to older management racing games and having great fun with those, but there's a new one on the horizon and it's called Formula Racing Manager. It comes out on the 30th of August and I've had preview access for a few hours to muck about with it, and I need to be very clear about who this game is aimed for. If you want to come in looking for a game that's about race management, this game is not for you. You do not see the races. The races take place on a automated simulation that you just get the menu results. You will not find any of that here. What you will find instead is a very streamlined and direct Formula One style management team game driven through menus and stats and probability. And so if that interests you and you want to get a legacy very quickly, you can pick up Formula Racing Manager and knock out a few seasons in several hours and see an entire ecosystem of drivers pass through the ranks and teams go up and down. And from that perspective, I think Formula Racing Manager offers a light and bite-sized way to approach racing management games that not many other games do. At the beginning of each game, you will select a team and your difficulty will be kind of dictated by which one you choose, because each team will have a budget driven by the TV money of its previous year's positions, but it'll also have infrastructure buildings of certain levels. Now, each level relates to how good they are, basically. So the merchandise factory will bring you in merch money each race or each week that you play in the game, and the more you level that up, the more money that will come in. Whereas if you've got the brakes facility or the front wing or side pod or rear wing R&D centres, they will focus on making each of those upgrades better whenever you choose to upgrade those parts of your car. Headquarters is all around kind of bringing in that sponsorship dosh, whereas the weather station helps you understand whether or not you're going to be able to deal with changeable conditions and that kind of stuff. Each infrastructure building will decay over time, so you'll need to keep investing in on them, but it takes time to build that up because each upgrade costs a lot of money, and so you'll need to kind of invest in them slowly over time. Once you've chosen your team, you'll then choose your contracts for the year ahead, and that's about your engine, gearbox, brake, front wing, rear wing and side pod. And each of these contracts will have an S2E rank on the different attributes of the car that they affect. So it might be top speed, downforce, handling, engine cooling or tyre management. It depends on the different thing that you're choosing, but it's very rare early in the game that you'll be able to have good everything, so you'll have to compromise. And then once you've got that up and running, you will then dive into the actual week-to-week management of your team itself. Each season has 16 weeks for 16 races, and at the end of each week you'll do the race. You'll see it just appear in a menu at the end when it says Simulate Weekend, and you'll spot the results. And my biggest takeaway from this game is that whilst there's an awful lot of stat manipulation going on in the background, seeing absolutely nothing and your weekend simulated does feel quite hands-off. And so when something goes wrong, it's very easy to just be like, why? Because you don't get tons of feedback as to why. But it's equally, when things go well, sometimes you're thinking, why? Because again, it doesn't give that mass amount of feedback. When you get to a race weekend, each of your two drivers has 4 slots for kind of altering what it is that they want to do. They can focus on practicing for themselves and improve their own driver stats, or it could be that they do some development work for testing for the gearbox or the engine or something like that. Or it could be that you're going to focus solely on race pace, and you can make all 4 race pace or all 4 gearbox testing, whatever it is that you like. And you'll be able to see when you go into the race weekend where you rank in the 10 teams for each of those car attributes for like top speed, handling, downforce. And you'll see the track stats for what the track is that you're going to. So obviously if you've got really big top speed and the straights are ranked as 20 because it's going to be the biggest weight to this track, say if you're at the USA Oval track, for example, then you're going to do really well. So it might be worthwhile really doubling down on that kind of engine testing, but also driver practice or race pace, so that you land that well. You get to also choose a race strategy as well, and that can be conservative or a little bit risky, or you can be like a total stab in the dark. And this feels like a total roulette wheel for me, because sometimes really conservative strategies go very well, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you can be really bold and nothing happens and you're just in the middle, and it does feel a little bit too randomised for my liking, or I'm just not getting the feedback on the results menu screen that makes me understand why something happened. And I guess there's always going to be some RNG in there somewhere, but it just feels a little too removed for my liking. Outside of that though, I really want to praise Formula Racing Manager for how it approaches sponsorships, contract extensions, and how you upgrade your car, because I think these are really tangible and easy to understand parts of the game, and they're where I had my most fun. So let's take a look at sponsorship first. In sponsorship, each sponsor is ranked 1 through 5 stars, and they'll pay out a base salary once, or base sponsorship deal every week, and then they'll provide a bonus if you meet a certain expected position. But they don't tell you that initially, and you're going in blind. But what you'll see is the priority score of how many squares you're going to spend, and you'll be able to spend more squares if you upgrade your headquarters, for example. But also you'll be able to see the progress that you're making on that sponsor versus whoever's the next leading team trying to recruit that sponsor. And so you can go all in, make something your top priority, and try and usurp the other team that you're going for, and maybe battling in the constructors to make sure that they get really bad deals. However, because you're never quite sure exactly what they're going to offer you, and you only get 3 sponsors, a main, a rear wing, and a nose cone, and they kind of go descending order of preference and money requirements, I guess. Sometimes you can get really dodgy deals. So some 5-star sponsors will 1 year just decide they're not going to pay you anything per week, and it's going to be entirely result dependent, but they're going to pay massive bonuses. So you have to be really confident that you're going to be able to hit it most of the time. However, some will offer very little bonus but offer a rather big base, and that might be quite lucrative for teams further down the order where things are a bit dodgy. And you can be quite tactical with this because you can see who's going for what, and you can start trying to block out your rival teams for it. Another way how you can block your rival teams is that you can set a lawyer to go and look out for a very specific team that you think might be cheating, because whenever you do an upgrade of parts, there might be a percentage of illegality that creeps in. And so if your rival that you've got a lawyer on manages to sneak through one of those parts, sometimes they'll get caught and they'll have to remove that part, and you'll see their performance drop. And that is incredibly satisfying and gives me extreme Grand Prix Manager 1 and 2 vibes in the best possible way. When it comes to the actual technical improvement part of this game, again, I really like the way how this is approached. Each of the engine, gearbox, brake, front and rear wing and side pods have their own specific stats. But you can then build up points week on week or race on race through the infrastructure buildings that you've built that match the parts that you're looking to improve. And you can then earn additional points if you select the part that you're looking to improve during testing. Now, this will add up to various different research points that are allocated to that specific part, and then you can take it on to be developed. And here you'll get an RNG selection of different upgrades and stats that your part can bring. So it might be that the engine increases the top speed, but also increases engine cooling, for example. Whereas your front wing might be able to reduce down dirty air tolerance so that when you're following in traffic, you can get away with it. But also might have an experimental improvement for tyre management. You could have a really big upgrade in one of those, but it comes with that illegality risk in it. Or it could be that you're going to halve the cost of the upgrade, or have a really big bonus, but it's going to take an additional week to complete and be ready. And you choose what it is that you want to do. And if you don't like what's been given to you from the RNG selection, you can spend some research points to re-roll it. And it feels a little bit like a Vampire Survivors or Brotato in between level up system shop, but in a good way. And I think it's a really nice and interesting and thoughtful way of doing technical upgrades. The other thing I really like in principle, although there is some issues with it in reality, is the contract management system here. You can choose to extend contracts of your additional staff from the technical side to the race engineers to the drivers themselves, or you can go scouting for new staff. And whenever you approach someone, you get 5 chances to negotiate with them before you kind of get closed out for that time period. And what you can do is offer like the length of contract or the amount of like pay that they're going to get per season. And they'll start off with a ridiculously high offer, and you decide whether or not you want to increase or decrease various different metrics to make sure that A, they're happy and interested, but B, it's still within your interests to keep them in. What I will say about this is that I systematically was able to keep the same people on my books, particularly in the technical side of things, by using all 5 of my negotiation tactics every single time and doing 4 to reduce down their salary and 1 to increase their length of contract. And they would invariably sign for almost always slightly less money than what I had them on the previous contract, and for multiple years, which was kind of how I shored up a lot of my finances in the game. So you can be a bit naughty with it, and it's difficult because you can't have constantly rising prices of staff because this game can go on for as many seasons as you want. But there should be something around you can only really offer the same again, not put them down lower, I think should be kind of the ceiling for it. There are some other things in this game that I really like as well, and it's the fact that it acknowledges that there are other series going on in the world. So in my world, in my playthrough, Guan Yu Zhou went off and won 24 Hours of Le Mans. It was really weird. But you've got like a Formula E equivalent that's going on, and drivers kind of come in and out of the series. Drivers retire but then have their son kind of come back as an offspring several seasons later in the Formula 3 world, working their way up. And there's some really nice touches here that just make it feel like a more lived in environment. And they're kind of things that don't make the game, but show that there's some real tender love and care that's been put into some of the systems that underpin a lot of this menu-driven game. And so from that perspective, I think this really depends on what you're coming in for. If you want this menu-driven management game where you can blast through a 10-season campaign and like literally go 50 years into the future and it's still generating like Alonso Jr. coming out, you will, but you only want like a few hours to do that. This game is probably the best example of what that can provide. If you're looking for something that's much more slower and methodical, or if you want anything to do with race simulating whatsoever, Formula Racing Manager probably isn't for you, and there are a lot of other games that are out there that I'd recommend over this potentially. But this feels a very specific niche, and it does it very well. And so whilst I appreciate this game isn't much to look at, you can definitely get lost in the details, especially as it comes with a total text editor in-game for you to make your own mods. So cue me setting up loads and loads and loads of F1 related mods for the last like 30 years. I can see it coming. I'll be doing it. I know I will. And I think the fact that I want to speaks volumes about the game. Written review will be over on higherplanegames.com. Any comments or questions, leave them down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope that was helpful. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.